You got to tell Father Christmas if you beat your name first.
Michael.
Michael what? There's lots of Michaels out there. Don't be shy, he's got to see your face so he knows who you are.
Mikey Rainsford.
Mikey's love for the family was more than I've ever seen. He was the glue to our family.
There's a brass band playing and we're walking through Brixham Harbour and he just starts dancing to the crescendo of the brass band playing, which, you know, made me smile.
Mikey was a fun friend, always cracking jokes, and we'd like jump out on one another and like try and scare one another. Just good times.
I remembered my phone going off quite early in the morning. It was the detective superintendent, and he explained about we've had the death of a young man.
Mikey came home, normal night, very quiet, just like it is now. And he came in and he said, well, to drop him off at his girlfriend's. I never got to finish the sentence when 2 bullets just come through the window.
And I remember I had Mikey just running, and then my dad running. And I was so clueless what was going on.
To be in your kitchen, the sanctity of your own home, and to be shot not just once, but twice.
30 seconds earlier, he was sitting there watching a television programme. Now your son's on the floor in your house, dying in front of you.
My birthday is forever tarnished by this horrible memory that a day later is the night I lost me everything.
We can never ever forget when evil visited, or the millions of happy memories, and that the evil one.
Dad, Dad, can you see me?
This picture here shows the first picture of Joanne seeing Michael. He was well enough to see the baby himself, which thankfully wasn't too long because he was born, you know, very, very healthy.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's on Big Bowler. That's in ramp works. I mean, it doesn't look it, but that's a very, very high ramp. He was a daring skateboarder. He had no fear whatsoever when it came to riding.
Mikey was a really talented skateboarder, and you could just tell like his heart was in it and he just loved it because he was here all the time and he was really passionate about it, and he was doing stuff that I'd never seen anybody else do, especially at his age.
He liked to keep himself fit, but he wasn't a poser. He liked to take his shirt off in the summer. Because he was just skateboarding and he was practicing sport so much, he was so healthy and fit, lovely smile, long brown hair as opposed to what I've got. He was just a handsome, very handsome young man.
Always looking out for me, giving me advice, telling me how to dress, you know, always putting a little bit of money in my pocket whenever I needed it, or literally anything. He was always there. He was that big brother that everybody always ever wanted.
What I could see between Mikey and his brother Josh, Mikey was always there for him, caring for him, making sure that he was good. But not only that, Mikey was obviously doing his own thing with his own friends, but he would allow Josh to be included in that. So he was a really good older brother.
We used to have play fights in the living room as well. We'd move the telly out the way and my mum and dad would sit there like we were having in like a little wrestling arena. And him being tall and this big kid, and I was this 4'11" small child. It was funny to watch.
Well, when you look down the road and you think these are all dreams and the horizons that we're never going to see, it could have been this, it could have been that. They're not just what ifs, it's being ripped away from you. I remember the 6th of April first because that was the day before Joshua's birthday. He just turned 16. It was a nice spring day.
Every morning he'd come down and he'd check on everybody. He'd ask how we were all doing. He'd do what he needed to do around the house. He'd sort the washing out, he'd do the dishes, he'd clean up for me mum. And once everything was done that he needed to do, he'd go out and enjoy his day with his friends.
He was actually running a bit late, and he came in and he said, well, to drop him off at his girlfriend's.
It's getting to about like around 11 o'clock. I remember our Mikey popping his head, and he comes over to me and says, do you know where my clothes are? Because I know you've been wearing them. And I sat there all defensive. No, I haven't. Knowing full well I had wore his clothes.
I reluctantly agreed, but I was never ever not going to take him. I was just tired, wanting to go to bed. So he went in the kitchen to get some cans of Coke and some other bits, sit up and watch some movies or something when he got round there. Just sat there for a couple of minutes. I thought I'd better go and prompt him. So I got up and walked into the back room, which led into the kitchen doorway. And I said to Michael, can you hurry up please, son? And I never got to finish the sentence. It was the loudest noise I've ever heard.
I'd seen these 2 big holes in the window. I followed my dad into the living room, and my brother shouted, "Get down!" And I was lying on the floor in the living room. My dad, he was standing there so shocked. He didn't know what to do. It was horrible. He was just frozen, and he snapped out of it.
He ran past me, and in them milliseconds, I'm thinking, I'm okay. He's okay because he's running in front of me. We just got into the hallway where we felt there was no windows, and we had hold of each other. We were sort of like trying to protect each other, thinking nobody's got hit. But okay, there's no blood. Michael said, Dad. And then he slumped. It just, he let go of me. So that's the moment you realise there's something seriously wrong.
Me and my dad, we flipped him round and we lifted up his top to see. We thought there was just one, but there was 2, and we seen the one in his chest, and we did what I thought I should do, and that was cover the hole with a towel, because I'd seen that's what you do, and it didn't work. The noises, it's a haunting noise that I'll always remember. I remember shouting to him, "Come on, Mikey, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay." I remember the colour just draining from his face. I picked up that phone. The first thing I said was my brother's being shot.
Is that police emergency?
My brother's just been shot.
Okay, what's his name?
Michael Rainsford.
He's been shot in the house.
Yes, quick, please.
You've been shot by?
We don't know. Michael, hey, Mike, wake up for me. Michael, wake up.
Police received a telephone call from Mikey's younger brother, Josh. Very distressing, very. You were a young man who was fearful. You were a young man screaming, begging his brother not to die. He had the presence of mind to tell the call taker that he was fearful for his and his family's safety because he didn't know whether or not the assailants were going to return.
I'm his brother, I'm his younger brother. We don't even know if we're safe. We don't know if we're safe to be here right now.
Michael became unresponsive. I tried to give him CPR. And it was just, I was doing the best I could, and they were kept on asking, was the people still there? And then there was a banging on the door. And I didn't know whether it was the police or it was these people who wanted to fire more shots. But it was the neighbours. And I can see the faces, how terrified they were when they seen what they saw. Trying to keep Michael alive, screaming down the phone to the police to hurry up. And then Michael just all of a sudden made this noise, like a loud, just so much louder and louder, and lasted for about 3 seconds. And it was my son, not wanting to leave us. And I looked at him, and he was scared. He was terrified. And his eyes rolled back. And he died dead. Are you getting your mum a present?
Yeah.
What are you going to get your mum?
Flowers.
Flowers, that's nice. What are you going to get your dad? Nothing, okay. He stinks, doesn't he?
No.
Okay.
Michael Rainsford murder happened late on April the 7th. And I think as crime reporter, quite often I'd be dialed into what's happening pretty much 24/7. We knew that there'd been a shooting that night, and we knew that somebody had been hurt.
It all happened so fast. From there, the armed response came through the door, and they brought in a defibrillator, and not even that was working. So they took him away in the ambulance, still trying to resuscitate him. And we were watching from the front door, him getting taken away. They had to put a sheet over him, and we ended up sitting there for about 20 minutes, getting spoken to by these police officers, and they were reassuring us, telling us that there's a chance he might survive. But 20 minutes after, they got the call back on the radio to say that he passed, and me and my dad, we just broke down.
I remembered my phone going off quite early in the morning. It was the detective superintendent, and he explained about we've had the death of a young man. Before long, I was in my car driving to work.
Became aware that sadly it had become a murder investigation, and after that attention turns to two things really: one, who's the victim, and two, what are the circumstances that have led to this scenario.
Based upon the nature of the shooting, coming outside of the home in through a kitchen window, they were looking outside the home for shell casings, for witnesses who may have seen cars or people coming and going. There's a lot less guns in the United Kingdom compared to the United States. So looking at who may have a gun, how this gun could be moved throughout the city.
I started reading a little bit about the deceased. The first thing that stood out was he was only a young man. You know, reading from the intelligence picture that we had started collating, he had his life ahead of him. I found out subsequently that Mikey was a keen spokesperson that he was a really good skateboarder.
Me and Mikey met when I was about 15. We were just friends ever since then. So he kind of helped me get comfortable in the skate park and introduced me to other people and the friend group that they all had here, and then just started to like help me skate and teach me all the stuff that he knew.
He was on a skateboard first time I ever videoed him, and he was actually inside the building of this complex, and he fell off it and landed on the floor. And then that was sort of like the start of, his journey into skateboarding. He never fell off a skateboard after that.
One of my favourite memories with Mikey was when he took me to Southport for the first time, and I hadn't been there before. And Mikey was like, "Wait for this tram to come past, and then we'll go behind it." But I didn't know what he was going to do, and then this tram come by, and he's like, "Quick, grab onto it." So next thing, we both grab hold of the back of the tram on our skateboards, and this tram's pulling us down the track, and we're just laughing our heads off.
Mikey lived in the South Sefton area of Merseyside, and it's not that far away from Bootle in the Docklands, and it predominantly working class people, probably the background that I came from as a working class lad. You had your level of criminality. We had a couple of shootings across the wider Merseyside region and neighbouring Force area. The thing that became apparent to me soon after, and I think this was within the first 24 hours, so we're still in that golden hour phase, is that there were two rival factions that were operating.
So having a shooting there isn't necessarily a surprise, but with Michael being the target, it was quite confusing as to what the motive might have been and why he might have been targeted.
In this specific area, there was a lot of escalating gang activity. There were shootings going back and forth. Police knew that this was the right age group to be potentially gang involved. They were worried that there was some involvement. And so I'm sure the first thing they were looking into is, was Mikey involved in a gang? Did he have any contacts? Was there something that led this to occur? Or was he simply just the victim of a tragic, unpreventable shooting?
He wasn't an obvious target. And that was clear very, very early on from this, not just from what the police are saying, but also from the friends and the family that we started to get into contact with.
Our witness had told us that there were two male figures who arrived at the location on a specific make and model of a bike. It was an electric bike, and it was a Sauron bike.
We started to see messages from on things like social media and tributes to. It became almost a bit peculiar because so often when this happens, once you find out who it is, you can almost see the pattern in which it's taken place. With Michael, there was just nothing obvious whatsoever. Liverland's an area that's gone through difficult times recently. Yeah, there was a lot of industry, particularly around the docks in the northern Liverpool area.
Working on various lines of inquiries, which included community intelligence. People were genuinely concerned. People were fearful.
The first priority for police is to examine whether this was a truly random shooting, if there was some connection, or if there was even a mistaken connection that could have led to this shooting. The first would be looking at everybody as a potential suspect and knowing they could strike on another member of the community.
Why was he shot in his home? Your home meant to be a safe place. Who was it who targeted him? Was he involved in gangs? Did he upset somebody? Was it a retribution for something else that he did? And then you start thinking, who else is at risk?
There's a scramble for information, and quite often there's a delay between what the police are willing to tell you before you can actually put that information out there. But even before then, you start to piece together what's happened. It's just a case of dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
The first thing I wanted to get a little bit more of is what can we get from CCTV? What can we get from ANPR? Witnesses. So we needed to cover quite a massive area as quickly as possible.
I told the police officer I've got to go and speak to his mum. I said, I can't tell you anything else. I don't know what's gone on, but Michael's dead. And everybody just broke down crying because we just couldn't comprehend what has gone on.
This was a normal family night in. My brother had just got home from being out with his friends, and this happened in the space of 10 minutes of being home. We were clueless of what happened.
I could see at the bottom of the stairs the leads, the needles, the equipment he'd used. It's, you know, adrenaline things and machines and blood, footprints, handprints. I couldn't let his mum see it. I couldn't let Mikey's mum see that. So I just put a towel over her head, and then Joshua led his sister downstairs in the same way, the towel over her head. So they never got to see have that traumatic memory of seeing what had happened at the bottom of the stairs.
With Michael, there was just nothing obvious whatsoever. It looked like a targeted murder because it happened at his home, shots had been fired through his window. So obviously, you think someone has deliberately gone there to target him, and there must be a reason for that. But the more that we found out about Michael, the more that we found out about his family, almost the more information we got, the more confusing this seemed, because it was very, very difficult to place a motive on what happened.
I wasn't just looking for evidence connected to the shooting, the act of murdering Mikey. I always wanted to see what sort of lifestyle did he have? Was Mikey a gangster, as they use it? Did he have firearms? Did he have wealth? Did he have anything that I could give as a motive for why he was targeted? And I didn't find it. Didn't find, other than a couple of pair of trainers. I remember walking away from the scene knowing that the assailant had targeted Mikey. I knew that they were shooting to harm Mikey, and this was from information that I got.
In the days and weeks after Michael's murder, for the first week we were in a bubble, and then we were allowed to go back towards the house, and they said we could go inside the house, and the bullet holes were still in the window. There was still shards of glass all over the kitchen on top of Joshua's birthday cake. It was a sight to see, you know, a banner in the living room, spots of blood in the hall, you know. But everyone was saying the same thing. Why Mikey?
The reality kicked in actually quite a far way down the line. After that happened, we were told that we couldn't no longer stay there because it was a crime scene and we had to stay somewhere else. And it was such a hard decision because that's the only home I've ever known for 16 years of my life. And that decision was probably one of the hardest decisions to make, not to go back.
On the night of his murder, Mikey Rainsford was looking forward to spending the night with his girlfriend. He asked his dad for a lift. He was so excited about the evening. He was in his kitchen and shots came through the window. And unfortunately, he died in his dad and brother's arms in a hallway in his own home.
The local policing team, we were able to start linking, because intel were coming in with different names, but two names that were quite high up on that list were Pip and Worm. I also started looking a bit closer to an incident that occurred not so long before the shooting, and this incident involved an allegation of criminal damage, and it occurred at Racina Street. That address happened to be the home address of Joyce Smith. who is the mother of James and Michael Foy. These are the two prominent members of a gang. Going from local intelligence and from statements by officers, we were quite quickly able to narrow down that Pip was in fact the nickname for James and Worm was in fact the nickname for Michael.
Heard about the potential involvement of the Foys before they were charged, during the kind of the early stages of police investigation. You know, it's a family that was known about in the area. I'd sat in the same room as Michael Foy just a couple of years earlier when he was jailed for drug dealing, for his involvement in a gang that dealt drugs in the streets around where he lived.
Michael hasn't been dead for 24 hours yet. They had in the region of 60 phone calls, all saying the same names that night.
I'd never heard of the Foys. I'd never heard James or Michael Foy. I always knew that he didn't know who it was because he never had enemies. Never had. He never upset anyone. No one ever had a reason to target him.
Telephone data led us to execute a warrant at an associate of the Foy brothers. We subsequently seized their phone, didn't get the firearm or the motorbike, but the telephone data resulted in us executing a warrant at an associate of the Foys because we knew that they'd been in touch, communicating on the phone within the relevant time. We subsequently seized this person's phone and was able to get it downloaded and embedded within Snapchat was a still image. Also embedded within this photograph was a very cryptic message which said something along the lines of, "Tell your ma, duck, don't use bricks." Then it had two emojis which looked like it was saying, "Haha, tell your ma, duck, don't use bricks, bang bang."
I remember the day of the funeral. Came out the house that morning. The whole of Harrington Road, every single neighbour was stood on the front garden, and the hearse come down the street, and we followed it up in a car, and there was about 20 cars behind us, following us down this little quiet road.
It was a lovely day. We buried him on the 1st of May. And I done a big eulogy. As we drove past the school, all the teachers and the pupils had come out. And they lie on the street. And they all applauded him.
He was known as a positive person within that community and for that community. You only have to look at the scenes for his funeral.
I was always quite scared to start riding in new places, but with our Mikey, he always just jumped straight on and got to work, didn't he? Always. He wasn't bothered as soon as he had a skateboard under his feet. He didn't have a care in the world.
This shows it because what this picture shows is smile. But it doesn't show you the 20 people out of shot of how many friends and how warm he was with people.
Mikey was gunned down in his own home while he was doing absolutely nothing wrong. Police saw this and knew they had very dangerous offenders out on the streets, and they were moving as fast as they could to remove them.
Michael Rainsford murder, the storyline essentially started just after 10 o'clock on the night of April the 7th. What happened essentially was the home of the Foys, where their mother was alone, bricks got put through the window, And that sparked a whole series of events, really, with the brothers finding out about it, trying to think who might be responsible, and then trying to enact retribution as quickly as possible.
Bricks were thrown through the window of the family seat of the Foys. The mom then made a telephone call to her son, James, who in turn contacted Michael Foy. Arrangements must have been made because we were able to prove that James travelled to a nearby park and Michael's girlfriend dropped him off at that location. The CCTV evidence shows two people travelling back towards Reseda Street on that motorbike. We know that the Foys made telephone calls to their associates, and then they seemed to travel directly to Harrington. I believe somebody gave them Mikey's name, and likely to be his address. The Foys did not have any evidence to suggest that Mikey was responsible for the damage. But again, if you look at it, a brick through a window and their response is to use a firearm.
In an hour, they're pulling the trigger of something that they don't even know. Yeah, that tells you everything that you need to know about them. The lack of due diligence, lack of thought process, even in terms of, the trail of clues that they leave that help the police to solve their crime, doesn't belie any sophistication. It belies an idiocy and a complacency and an arrogance.
We executed a warrant at the Foy's house. Sadly, James was not there, but we found a number of items which we thought were relevant. We were able to confirm that they had access to electric bikes because there were component parts and chargers, etc. The witness stated that one of them was wearing a Moncler jacket, or at least one of them, and we recovered similarly described jackets within the property. Both brothers, James and Michael Foy, were arrested by members of the team. Both gave no comment interviews, and we recovered the invoice for the purchase of the red Surron bike. So we were able to put those in the Foy's possession. Another key piece of evidence was that we sent off the jackets to be examined, and the scientist was able to find gunshot residue on the garment. The type of GSR was what you would expect for the killer of Mikey to be in contact with.
It makes me feel heartbroken that his life was cut short by these monsters, because he meant nothing but good to the world and to the people around him. And it does make me emotional to think kind of the impact that's having on his family as well.
We discovered that my son was murdered in retribution for a broken window where these two lads lived with the mother in Seaforth. And an hour before my son's murder, somebody had thrown a brick through their window. And in their delusional gangster world, criminal world, somebody was going to pay for that.
To know that someone had took my brother's life over a broken window, to any rational person, that seems so bizarre to do something like that. To take another person's life over a broken window.
We were told that a lot of the evidence they had was circumstantial. It was going to be a very tough case to prove because there was no gun, There was no motorbike. These were important pieces of evidence.
The two brothers set off with murderous intent and executed Mikey in his kitchen before callously jumping back on the bike and heading back towards the family seat. The call data and the telephone information, CCTV, suggested at some stage their uncle assisted them with disposing of the bike. We were never able to prove where the weapon went, who disposed of it, is it hidden?
The trial itself, every day was like tearing the page of a book that you'd never read, because we were being told for the first time, undiluted. To see them two, they were just scrawny kids who thought that they were outlaws with guns.
On the first day of the trial, as the SIO, you're probably more nervous than the family, because that's the first phase that the judge is going to look at the technicality, the legality of things that you've done. When the defense put forward their case, you know it's not personal, but it feels personal. If they question something they didn't get or something that they are accusing that wasn't done in a certain way, you feel personal because you've lived that case for over a year. You've lived, breathe, sleep, eat, everything.
Being only 16, it was a lot to take in, and I stopped going. They played back the 999 phone call. It's so hard to listen to the full thing. You can hear everything.
There was no remorse at all with any of them. Nothing made sense. You know, I had no doubt in my mind that the jury were going to say innocent or guilty. I know who killed my son, and I knew what they were going to say.
Covered the murder trial throughout. I was there every day of the 6 week and then again for the sentencing at the end. And they're really, really difficult processes to be involved with. They're horrible because you have lives on the line. You have a life that's already been lost, the family's lives, and they've been torn apart by what's happened, and they're desperate for justice. These trials take place and they're so tense and they're so emotional. The consequences of the actions of whoever responsible, they lie heavy on the atmosphere of the courtroom because so much is at stake. Whether they're going to get convicted, going to sent to jail. In this case, it's murder, so it's a mandatory minimum life sentence.
During the course of the criminal trial, I think the brothers it's almost like it was a theatre. There were points that, yes, they were listening intently, but at the same time, there were points that they showed a disregard for the process, head down, eyes turned away, smirking, smiling at each other. I don't think I was surprised because they had that almost arrogant attitude throughout the course of the investigation.
I went to the verdict. I couldn't miss that. And I remember just every single day I was there, I couldn't take my eyes off them. Just knowing it was them who'd done that.
Michael had been murdered. He was dead. He wasn't with us anymore. And it was just a shard of relief, comfort that the people who'd done it had been killed, but it wasn't bringing them back.
It really was extraordinary what unfolded in Liverpool Crown Court that day. We've heard the Foys and their barristers protesting their innocence.
They were looking at the jury. They were being a bit more jokey about things, which repulsed us because, it was disgusting. You just announced that they were all guilty one by one. They all started swearing and shouting, punching the walls.
James Foy's barrister got up. He uttered some of the words that still live with me today, to be honest. And he said that all of a sudden his client wanted to tell the court that he was guilty. He was the person that pulled the trigger that night. And it was just stunning.
James and Michael Foy were sentenced for their crimes on the 12th of March in 2021. James Foy was sentenced to a minimum of 28 years in prison, and Michael Foy received a minimum of 30 years in prison for the murder that they committed.
I was pleased with the length of sentences, but we're the parents who have the life sentence who every day have to wake up to this, to see Michael's clothes in the wardrobe, to think of all the horizons that they've stolen.
I have never commented on sentences. I'd never try and say I think it should be more, I think it should be less, because I think the judges will have all the facts and they would have given a good explanation in the summing up. Do I think the sentence was probably appropriate for an offence of murder? Yeah, it was. It's every member of the team who wants to give the Rainsford family justice. You can only walk away knowing that you've done your best. And on this occasion, I did my best.
At the end of that trial, he actually said, "We'll be out in 40 years, but your brother will still be in the mud." That stuck with me every day, because as harsh as that is, it's true. They'll be out in 40 years, but I'll never have my brother back. And it just breaks my heart to know that. He could have gone on to be such an amazing person. He had a future, he really did have a future, whether it was into skateboarding, whether it was photography, whether it was fishing, he had a future. He's the perfect person. He was so perfect, and it's really sad that he's gone.
He could go into this skate park he'd never been to before, where all the local kids were skating, and they'd all stop and watch. Who's this kid? You know, he was that talented. You know, he could have, it could have gone as far as he wanted it to.
I think that it's really devastating that he won't be able to live out all of these opportunities that would have been there waiting for him, given all of his talents. He could have done a whole host of different things with his life, especially now with the BMX and the skateboarding. It's kind of getting more popular, and with the Olympics and stuff like that. And I genuinely believe Mikey could have, given them all a run for their money, because he was just that good.
Since Michael's murder, we all changed for the worse. Physically and mentally, I could happily draw the curtains and never go out again. And when you do go out, you put a mask on, because of what it does to you. And it's the same for Joanne, Mikey's mum.
You take it all for granted before these things, you walk around the house and you sit in your brother's room and you have arguments with your brother and you just take it all for granted. The first thing I did when I came back was go straight to the window, and from there I went straight up to his room and I lied there, and I just lied there for hours, just holding his personal belongings, It was horrible.
I'm haunted by seeing how scared and terrified Michael was in the last seconds of his life, when he should have been sitting in the car going to see his girlfriend. What would the future have held? Getting engaged, having an old child, moving in together, just growing up. Doing the growing up boring things. But, they also still had a lot of fun things to do. Lots of millions and millions and billions of memories to be made. And those animals took it away.
Seeing that happen to the person you look up to most, it ripped me apart. You know, I remember trying to be this strong man. I felt like I lost a piece of me that night. I really did. You know, someone I looked up to so much, he's never there anymore, do you know what I mean? And it broke me. And I'll never heal from that.
Okay, I think Father Christmas has got everything he needs to know. So you wave bye to Father Christmas. And you'll get your message, okay? Put this in the post for him, okay? Alright.
Okay.
Here you go.
What?
Bye.